This is The Roxanne Show. Get ready. It's time to rise. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Beauty Radio. In today's Solosode, expect a very high frequency transmission because some of these ideas that I want to tease out today came through on a very deep and very elevating conversation that I had with one of my very best friends. And it was so important and so powerful. So let's set the table here. One of my absolute favorite subjects to learn about, think about, contemplate on, to move myself through is consciousness. And it's a very, very big subject. Very, very big. And it's important to bring this forward in this episode because what's coming on the podcast, i.e., guests, there are some really, really brilliant thought leaders that contribute massively to the conversation around consciousness. One thread in consciousness that I want to tease out in this episode is something that I have come to really I've come to discover this about myself in the last year or so, just thinking about consciousness. And it was this idea of, the people that in my life that I tend to be closest to are those who I feel an alignment with in levels of consciousness, right? And it had me, when this idea came to me, more of like a realization, not even an idea. I started kind of scanning back, like looking at, the dynamic I have with others and, who am I really drawn to? Like, who do you really invest in making time with? And the through line is like a very just hard, undeniable statement that is those that I feel the most resonance with in terms of levels of consciousness. And I believe that, we're here to continuously expand our consciousness, right? To ascend ourselves through the expansion of our consciousness. Now, look, it's a very deep subject, and there's some things I want to tease out that I have to make sure that I have time to get to, because the conversation around consciousness it's endless, and that's also why it's so provocative to me. Like you can't. There's a commercial that went down in the 80s. It was around the Tootsie Pops, right? And the whole commercial was like, you can't get to the center of a Tootsie Pop because there was chocolate in the middle of the lollipop. Anyways, I digress. So with consciousness, there's no end point. It's also like jujitsu. You talk to any black belt, there's always more to learn. That's why it's so provocative. That's why it's so exciting and so stimulating, because you're never going to fully master it. And I think with consciousness, it's the same thing. We're never going to fully master what it even means and our kind of relationship with it. However, we can definitely come into a deep sense of integration, understanding, comprehension within consciousness, And I'll say this and then just kind of move us along. But when I had mentioned that those who I tend to get along with the most, and when I say get along, I mean like I'm engaging more with, they're the ones that I'm having the most conversations with. They're the ones that I just find myself most drawn to spend the most time with. It's the level of consciousness that they have that puts us in alignment, because also this is one big reason. The conversations are so rich. This is really important here. I think the higher state of consciousness you're living from, the less judgmental you become. The higher state of consciousness you are living from, the less judgmental you become, and you're operating with. Because they really oppose each other. Like, to be a very high conscious person, you really start to strip away judgment. This is where And this is actually a really important point. This is where, so when you think about like, we've all heard like, don't take it personal. Yeah, I agree. So what does that mean? Conceptually, we understand. It means like, it's not about me, right? Don't take it personal. But I think that it's a statement that deserves a little bit more of like elaborate more, right? Just so that individuals can really understand it more. So what I want to say about that is that when you are operating with a higher state of consciousness, you truly, truly start to understand that everybody, every single one of us is operating from a certain level of consciousness. Okay, so let's just draw that out. We're all operating from a certain level of consciousness. I'm not making better or worse. I'm not grading anybody. I'm just saying we all have our levels, right? And when you, as in any one of us, starts to really dive into the fucking vortex of consciousness and start to understand more about it, then you understand that, number one, you can never, ever push a button and have someone's consciousness meet up with yours. It doesn't work that way. People are where they are. I am where I am. You are where you are. He is where he, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times the disagreements or misunderstandings or conflict, any of all of that can come as a result of the differences in where our consciousness lies, because consciousness is affecting our beliefs, our behaviors, our habits, our perspective, right? It's really affecting our perspective about ourself, our self-identity, and that's affecting our perspective towards life. So if I'm just making this example, right, on YouTube, pointing over there, his consciousness is, we're not a match, right? Again, maybe he's just he needs to grow more. Fuck it, maybe make it me. I need to grow more. There might be certain behaviors that I'm just not living up to yet that then can cause a disagreement of some sort with an individual who is more expanded, in consciousness than I am, right? But the person who has a more expanded and higher state of consciousness is also someone who's going to hold more grace, just as is in general. Like you move through your life with more grace for self and grace for others, right? And this is also where the judgment piece starts to, it starts to fall away a bit, right? And there's also more compassion and more empathy. And this is also why, kind of full circle, why I tend to, I find that, I'm going to be closer to those who I feel more aligned with on a consciousness level and are more expanded, because I know that I do live from a very high level consciousness. I'm not saying that there aren't levels to go, because there fucking certainly are. But, being a very deep introspective woman who has continuously throughout my life just done all this self-work that I'm always here talking about, sharing, it really has supported me to be able to be very integrated with my highest self and therefore the universe, the all source, right? This is my language around it, which is really one consciousness, okay? So if you have to rewind that and go back and listen to that a few times, I definitely think it's a good idea to do it. If some things just kind of flew over your head, maybe not, but I think it's really important to just think about that concept of where is your consciousness level and who are the people closest in your life? Like, where's their consciousness level? And if you're not even familiar with, again, like, what does that even mean, consciousness? And I certainly suggest that you start diving into learning more about consciousness. But I feel like if you're paying attention to me and, at my show, then you probably have a good footing in consciousness and certainly what consciousness, even means and how it's affecting us in our life. So to move us along, I want to talk about the perspective piece, the self-identity perspective piece. From my conversation with my best friend, she resurfaced a conversation that we had quite some time ago. And she was just saying how some of the words that I shared were really chiming in loudly right now for her. And the words were centered around just the way that she was looking at things and how that was actually shaping her reality. And there's never going to be an endpoint to this topic for me, because the more that you start to get this game behind the game of life, the more empowered you are, the more you live from your most sovereign self, the more that you activate your innate agency to be a conscious creator of your life, conscious creator, right? Because you're always creating your life, but are you doing it consciously? The goal is consciously, because then we're moving ourselves with intention and we're actually creating, manifesting that which we desire to experience in this life, right? Versus being, living in this reactive state. Like, this happens to me and I become this, I do this. No, it's not what we're here to do. So the self-identity piece is really important. The self-identity piece is huge. Your perspective towards life is being shaped from your self-identity, your self-concept. Self-identity and self-concept are really interchangeable, right? Just for you to know. I just use the word self-identity. I have a framework around your self-identity because it's like, what is that, right? Your core beliefs, your leading or core attributes, your core principles, and your boundaries. This is really, really important. This framework, that's a big portion of my Future Self digital course. And the reason is because your beliefs, your habits, your behaviors, your self-talk, all of this stuff that shapes your actual life is coming as the result of your self-identity. I call it the diamond in you, the self-identity ecosystem. So if your self-identity is disempowered, if you have programs, if you have beliefs that are disempowering you, that are limiting you, if you don't have strong boundaries, if you have flimsy principles or none at all, I'm going through the list, right, of the ecosystem, it's shaping your life. And it's likely going to be giving you experiences that don't feel great. When you start doing the work to reshape your self-identity and you start to focus on how you can, reprogram the programs that are limiting you to be ones that are unlimited or more empowered, when you can get very clear on your core values, get very clear on your core desires, get very clear on your personal boundaries that you need to keep intact for your optimal state of well-being. This is all going to change the relationship that you have with yourself, and that's going to change your perspective, not only about yourself, but how you're looking at life. And your perspective towards life is shaping your reality. This is why it's a joke. If you're any one of us trying to change anything out here before we change what's in here, it's not going to work. It doesn't work. It's just going to create more resistance and frustration. And then you're going to think you're fucking defected. Like, why can't this? Or this is all wrong out here. It's like, well, no. How are you looking at it? Everything is energy. You are a radio frequency. We are all a radio frequency emitting an energy. This is why, I recorded one of many to come, but I recorded an episode on manifesting, and I'm talking about the law of resonance, resonant energy, a resonant frequency. That which you desire to experience, you have to get into a resonant frequency with, right? You can't change anything out there in your reality without changing the relationship that you have with yourself, which then changes your actual perspective towards life. So much of the perspective that you have towards life that's coming from the relationship that you have with yourself. Oh man, this is really a deep subject. So much of it is coming as a result of programs that have been instilled into your subconscious and even your conscious thinking throughout your life, right? So there's probably a lot of fear, there's judgment, which then leads to, lack thoughts or lack-based thoughts and limitations. What I want to invite you to do is question everything. Question everything. What I mean by that is that there's a lot of like kind of lazy thinking is the term that I like to use for it. And it's true. Like we'll just stop short. But my invitation is, can you just go a little deeper? So if it's a belief, as an example, where does the belief come from? Why do you believe in it? These questions are so important. And it's not like interrogation, right? There's nothing wrong with asking questions, period. Questions are the greatest gift that I've ever given myself. The questions are what have brought me to be in this position that I'm in now with myself, and then out here being able to contribute the way that I am, and I've done that the majority of the time in my journal, which is why I'm such an advocate for journaling, right? It's a safe space to ask myself these questions. But of course, meditation, and just the more that you do it, the more it's just natural for you to just be very inquisitive with yourself, inquisitive about that belief. Where is that belief coming from? Am I operating from a truth within me? Am I operating from love? Is that a love-based belief? Is that a love-based thought? Or is it coming from fear? Is it coming from, worry or self-judgment? If you can't ask yourself these questions, you're kind of just running on autopilot or some kind of programming that is probably not going to empower you to really thrive in your life. And I'm never, ever just talking about thriving out there. There's a fucking lot of people who have all the money, all the business success and this and that. Great. But they're fucking empty in here, right? So I'm always talking about 360 degrees of thriving, right? Thrive in here first, and then watch what happens out there. And even if it takes longer to catch up out there, if you're operating with real fucking sovereignty, like you're operating from your authentic self, you're operating with unconditional self-love and true compassion, and you're on your fucking team in life, you are going to be a more confident individual, which is going to put you in stronger positions for opportunities and, relationships that are very, fulfilling and harmonized, and it goes on from there, right? So thriving, focusing on here, inner work first, is always the fucking number one in my world, personally. And then let the outer reflect what you are, feeling and how you're living from within. There's an inner reality. So you have to realize there's the inner reality and then there's the external reality, right? So if this inner reality is feeling really good and empowering you and, inviting you to continuously, expand yourself and to live from higher states of self-expression, your outer reality is going to reflect that. And it's probably going to be a fucking reality out here that's going to feel good to you, So I'm in the weeds. I just, it's very, and I came in here and I'm like, you are going to go into so many fucking rabbit holes, but this happens. To my new listeners or viewers, welcome. This happens a lot with me, but to my longtime viewers and listeners, you're already familiar that I can definitely fall off in the deep end at times, but I will always bring us back. So to kind of put a little bow on the self-identity piece and how that's shaping your perspective and why it's so important to ask questions so that you can really come to know your authentic self. Again, like, how do you know your authentic self? Do not think that you know your authentic self just because you know your name, you know where you're from, and that doesn't mean anything. That was all given to you. Who are you truly? And that can only come as a result of you developing a relationship with yourself. You got to understand that part. It's so important. You have to develop a relationship with yourself, and you want to consciously be doing this, right? How do you develop any healthy relationship? How do you develop a relationship that is, giving to you, that you were giving to, where you're thriving, like it's flourishing, it's healthy, it's trusted, it's, there's respect there. You invest. You have to be honest. You have to, ask questions. You have to really spend time with anybody that you're cultivating or wanting to cultivate this kind of relationship with. And that has to be a mutual thing. So it's important for you to do that with yourself, right? To really know your authentic self. And this is not a fast overnight process. Sorry. I know everybody wants it fucking fast and now, but I can't give you that. What I can say is this: it gets a lot easier when you start doing the work consistently to really know, trust, and love, and then be devoted to operating from your authentic self. But in the initial, it could feel a little harder, and just in general, it's going to take work, but it's the best work you could ever do. It's work with, about you. It's work where you get to know yourself more fully, and you get to really just come home to the truth of you. Truth. That's going to segue me right now. So important for me to say this, you guys. This was a mic drop moment in the conversation yesterday. I had sent something to my best friend a while ago, and it came back up, and I said to her, and she was just saying, like, that was so powerful when you said that to me. And I'm like, Melissa, thank you. And maybe I am a fucking oracle, right? I mean, this is what I do. I like transmit, messages. It's my gift and I love it, right? And maybe I said something in a way that you were able to hear it differently, in that moment to where it really impacted you. But I want to make this clear as well, that the reason why it impacted her, my words impacted her in that moment, is because those words rang as a truth in her heart. And so, I told her, I'm like, it's less about acknowledging me, and it's more about that you acknowledged you, because you already knew what it is that I shared, you as in my best friend, and that's so important to understand and to really think about here, that, sometimes people just take things on first, like surface level. And then again, like, don't fucking be a lazy thinker. Ask yourself a question. I'm always like, what? Not always in every fucking moment. I don't need to do that. But kind of deeper moments of thinking or ideas, or when I see myself very kind of invested in like a fuck yes or a fuck no, I just like to ask myself, like, where's that coming from? And the heart, I always say this, like, the heart doesn't fuck around. The heart doesn't give out any shoulds. It's a sharp yes or a fucking sharp no, because the heart is the truth, right? Your heart, which is also where your intuition's voice comes from. And this is also the expression of your authentic self, right? So this is just my kind of framework around it. There is no should. It's a sharp yes or a fucking sharp no. The mind starts to bring in the shoulding, right? This is why we really want to do our very diligent work to cultivate that relationship with our heart, right? Which helps us get a stronger voice to our intuition, which helps us also operate from our most authentic self, right? Are you following the thread? It's a lot, but it's a lot that's important, right? My best friend, again, it wasn't so much about the words that I shared. It was about her acknowledging the truth that she already felt inside. And I just helped her to see that truth, right? So even with anything that I share here on the show or in any of my work, you guys, I'm never here to tell you how to think. I don't want to tell you how to think. I am here to invite you to think about what you're thinking, how you're thinking, and why you're thinking. Whatever it is that you're thinking, it's not about what I'm saying. It's about you thinking about what you're thinking and how you're thinking it. And why are you thinking it? And these are really powerful questions to be asking yourself. And I firmly do believe this at this stage of my consciousness, right? Could say my life. I'm going to say my consciousness. The frequency of truth cuts through everything. That's why whether you agree with, let's just say, an individual or not, you can fucking read when there's authenticity coming out of a person. It's undeniable. And actually, there was a test. I can't cite I don't know what the actual test was, or unfortunately, I will dig deeper to find this. But I was listening to an incredible individual talking about that there was actually research done on the frequency of authenticity, different frequencies, and authenticity was the strongest that a human could feel. And I truly believe that, So when you hear something, when you take in an idea or you're reading something and it really hits you sharply, it's likely because it's a truth that you already feel inside, right? So that was just a cool thing that I wanted to share, and a very powerful moment with me and my girl. So something else that I want to live in this episode, and it's certainly going to be, more of a subject that I will tease out in all of my work. But it's this idea of self-judgment. So kind of touched on it earlier, but I want to pull on something that, in my conversation with Melissa yesterday that came up. That was, again, it was like a fucking mic drop moment. And I was just talking about, look, everyone's going to judge you, right? And we judge ourselves. Again, I believe because it's been my experience that the more an individual expands their consciousness, so is living from a higher state of consciousness, the less judgment the person is operating from. Judgment towards others, judgment towards self even, right? Because what comes in is more empathy, is more compassion, is more grace. We never get rid of energy, right? We just transmute it. So that's the pivot there, is that judgment turns into more grace and, compassion and just empathy, right? And so I was saying to her, but when you're living from your authentic self, be ready. There's going to be a lot of judgment, for many different reasons and many different moments. And it's the through line in my life has been, I've lived from my truest self, right? I've had to continuously get to know my true self. And I've done that work. I continue to do that work with so much love. And one of the core takeaways that I can say right now at this stage is that operating from my authentic self has definitely positioned me at times to really just have to face a lot of friction, a lot of challenge. I don't want to paint a picture that, when you're living from your authentic self, like be ready, it's like a life of misery. Not at all. It's actually what has given me and continues to give me some of the most incredible, what others could call miraculous, but I just see it as an energy thing, experiences. And to be a very opulent woman living a very opulent life, right? So, it's going to come. You're going to get both sides always. This is nature, right? So you got to kind of pick your battle. That's why I often say about the authentic self, like be ready, like choose the pain and the discomfort that comes either from not operating from this highest expression, this authentic expression of yourself, or from operating from it. You're never going to escape the discomfort or the pain. It will show up whichever way you decide to go. I say, choose your fucking true self. Because the level of unconditional love, which also is forged with that self-respect, right? They go hand in hand. Self-respect lives in self-love, from my perspective. The level that those levels that you create within yourself, forget it. This is empowerment. This is like, who you are. You fucking know who you are. This is so important. I firmly believe this is the greatest task for all of us, to really come to know who we truly are. And then as you really create this relationship from your true self, your authentic self, which I also believe is the magnetic fabric of your highest self, now, you're operating from your most sovereign, autonomous state. Nobody can fucking come in and just tell you who you are or how you should. No, because you have developed an unbreakable relationship with yourself, your highest self, your authentic self, right? So if there's something that doesn't feel in resonance with that truth of you, then your hand is fucking by. Like it goes over your head, whatever, right? The judgment piece that I want to wrap up here is this. Look, you're going to be judged no matter what, right? And I was saying to my girl, I was like, I'll be judged no matter what. But what I will never do, especially at this stage of my consciousness, my life, is to judge myself to the point where I stop myself from evolving into higher states of my self-expression, right? We'll keep it simple. I will not judge myself and stump my growth as a result of it, because judgment will do that, right? Self-judgment. You become self-critical. You become, you start self-sabotaging. You become very limited in your thinking, right? And that's going to prevent you from ascending into higher states of yourself, right? And it can be very easy to, have these barriers come up in your thinking mind and ultimately in your life if you're allowing, the judgment of others to rule you, and also your self-judgment inflicted upon yourself, right? So it's really important, to start, again, I'm going to keep pointing you to journaling, because self-judgment, or even being, ruled by others' judgment of you, this could be so common in your life that you don't even see it happening, right? And you're just kind of living with the emotions that come as a result of the experience that you're getting from this judgment, right? Whether it's self-judgment or, judgment from others that you're allowing to lead your life, like create your life with. But journaling will help you discern what's actually fucking happening, like figure it out, dive deeper into yourself to then create, again, a relationship with the truth of you, right? So yeah, I'll close on that. I'll put a pin on that, and I'll definitely bring that back up, because it really does in its own episode, because it really opens up the door wider to talk about, how to really be living from your most sovereign self, which is, to me, it's like your authentic self. But I'll stop there, and just hopefully what I shared, because I shared a lot here, and again, there's no fucking notes. It's not like, I'm sitting there and, and I'm not talking with anybody else. This is just all really potent, authentic information that comes from the relationship that I've cultivated with my highest self. And also, just being a very curious individual who has been, my whole life just diving deep into the realms of esoteric and mysticism and science and philosophy, and, and I've been able to pick up on things that feel like a truth to me, right? So I hope that some of this, the goal for me, yes, for you to get to know me more, but the real goal is for you to get to know you more. It's always the goal over here with me. Let me know how you feel. If it's YouTube, throw something in the comments. Thank you for everybody who is, showing up there. And I love connecting with all of you. Instagram, DM me, share it up on your stories. You know what to do. There's a link in the show notes to give this podcast a 5-star rating and review, which means the world to me and my team. And be ready, because there's a lot more on these subjects that are going to come out in upcoming solosodes, but also with some incredible guests that I'm so honored to know, and then to have come on the show to share their brilliance with all of you. So I will see you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review.